Ethics and engineering. This is going to concern your senior project or capstone experience. I know you've had an introduction to ethics in Engineering 10, but this is going to integrate ethics and your senior project. Just as a brief reminder, the study of ethics should help us resolve moral dilemmas. And a moral dilemma may be defined as a conflict a person experiences between two or more moral obligations in a particular circumstance. Now, what are some typical engineering ethics issues? Well, you can have a conflict of interest, public safety and welfare, integrity of data and representation of it, whistleblowing, choice of a job, accountability to clients and customers, plagiarism, trade secrets and industrial espionage, gift giving, bribes, and fair treatment. Now, one thing that can come up in engineering, integrity of the data and the representation of it. That means when you're measuring something, you have to make sure that the data you're getting is accurate. And it can be easy to overstate the effect of something by zooming in on the axis. For example, as a graduate student, I was doing a simulation that was an optical filter. And by applying a voltage, you change the index of refraction of this stack of semiconductor materials. And by changing that index of refraction, you change the filter response to light. Well, in my simulations, I ran it up to 10 volts because I thought that was what the material stack would handle. But my C program didn't have a way of calculating whether the material would essentially break down and get ruined if it went beyond 10 volts. I just had to know that I shouldn't go beyond 10 volts. Well, my professor wanted me to take it up to 20 because 20 volts would show, in this particular example, 2 times the effect because he was writing a grant and needed to show that this system was a good one. Well, I really didn't want to do that because I felt the material system couldn't handle the 10 volts. And we went around and around about this issue. And I went and did what the professor wanted. I could have, drawn a line in the sand and say, no, it can only handle 10 volts. I deferred that time to the professor. And the way it turned out is that, as just a grad student, once I learned more, I noticed that material systems that might be able to handle a certain voltage at a certain time, certain point in technological history, that would be improved over time. So, for example, silicon dioxide, when it was contaminated with sodium, had a certain leakage current. As time went on and silicon dioxide was learned how to be purified further, that leakage current went down. So in the end, I think I made the right decision, is that it wasn't something that was going to cost anybody their life. And in fact, yes, the professor did know more than I did at that time, and I just saved myself a lot of embarrassment. But these kinds of issues can come up. Now, IEEE has a code of ethics, and I'll leave you to read these on your own. I'm not going to read them for you. And there is a history of professional codes of ethics. 1803, we had medical ethics, and then civil engineering in 1852 developed a standard of ethics, mechanical engineering in 1880, electrical engineering, now it's IEEE, 1884, chemical engineering 1908, and in 1948 the Institute of Industrial Engineers. Okay, so every computer engineering tends to be part of the IEEE, and a lot of the BME things go to a lot of IEEE conferences. If you know in your major, your governing body for ethics, let me know and I'll change these slides. Now, given that engineering is part art, part science, part design, profession, and a business, there will be ethical dilemmas. And what we're going to try to show you is a way to manage that at the end of this talk. Now, it may seem when in one of your engineering labs that whenever you're doing something, it's pretty isolated from the rest of the world, and it's true. School can be like that. If we let the rest of the world in, we might never be able to get to learn the technical thing that we needed to do. But once you graduate, your projects and things that you do will be part of the human world. You have a technical, non-technical system such as political, family, work environments, schools that you have to interact with. There'll even be a technical system where there's a supply chain or a technology base that allows things to occur. There's many ideas that, for instance, Leonardo da Vinci, he created, but there was no technical system around at the time that would allow those ideas to be made practical. And each level has its own ethical considerations. Now, to make it a little more concrete, there's 3 levels to any engineering project. There's you, the individual engineer. This is the group that you're working with. And then there's the product that's being engineered. And the catchphrase is the engineer engineers the engineered. The person, the team, and the product. Now, there's 3 classes, or there's more than 3 classes of ethics, but the 3 that we'll concern her with, the first one is material ethics. And this is how the product, meaning interacts with the world. Then the virtue ethics is how does the individual interact with the project and the world. And in this case, it is a bit strict in that a person has a virtue, let's say honesty, that's deep-seated in their being. And this comes from Plato, Aristotle, and even ancient Chinese societies had this kind of ethics. You can't really tell if somebody's ethical just by watching them, or is honest just by watching them once or twice. And it can be hard to turn into a code, because it's just, you kind of state, I am an ethical person, or you're not, and kind of just given. It does have 3 components, and if you're more interested, you can go to this website and read about it. It can be easy to misinterpret. Then there's the conceptual ethics that'll deal with the society, social justice, environmental sustainability, health and safety. You can read a little bit more about it on that website. Now, this is all very high level, and it can be a little difficult to think about your code of ethics of your profession, virtue ethics, material ethics, conceptual ethics. So what I've done is I've developed an engineering scorecard, ethical scorecard. And it's going to force you as an engineer to slow down and think about these issues of the person, group, and product before a new product is created. And even though each discipline has its own code of ethics, which are in general a set of rules, most often we don't go around with a rule book in our head seeing if we're going to violate a rule before we take any action. So an example of how this scorecard could work, I can use a case example in the Army where instead of an ethical scorecard, we use a safety scorecard. And we would, before we would do any training activity, we would fill out a scorecard and tally it up. And if you had a high number, it would be considered unsafe. And if you had a low number, it'd be considered safe. Now the thing is it is the Army. Just because you say something is unsafe doesn't mean you're not going to do it. But what you would do is by filling out a certain series of questions, you could find out as if the activity was inherently unsafe, and then you would resolve those safety issues. For instance, if the activity was going to be at night, that would be flagged as being less safe than being during the day, and then you would order some night vision goggles, or make sure that you did your practice the activity in the day before you tried it at night. Now, the scorecard is broken up into three things: the individual engineer, and essentially it's the IEEE Code of Ethics, but just written in a form that is more of a doing. This particular examples happen to be EE-centric. You can modify this to your own major's discipline. So, for instance, I have no conflict of interest working on this project. If you strongly disagree, that means, hey, you do have a conflict of interest. And you're going to have, if you put a 1 there, or in the score, you would put a 1. And then you would really have to not just leave it as 1, meaning there's an ethical problem, you have to write over here how you're going to fix it. And so you go through filling out these numbers, and then it gets summed up. Same thing with the team. And again, each major runs their senior project slightly differently. And if you want to modify these comments, go right ahead. In this case, I've given 5s for the first two things. Well, 5 means you strongly agree, meaning you're an ethical superstar. Well, you just can't put a 5. You have to justify why you can give yourself a 5. And the final thing is the actual engineered product. How will it solve a real world problem? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Can't just put 5. I have to really justify how this is my product. And again, maybe not at the end of senior project, but you have to imagine your product being widely adopted. Will it eventually affect the environment? Will it be able to be created in a sustainable manner? Here I gave myself a 2, meaning my product, I'm using old lead containing parts. So I can't really leave it at 2. I'd have to say, oh, I will switch to the new lead-free compliant parts. So what will happen is all of these will be summed up, and you can get a base number of just how ethical you are. Now you just don't leave it at that. You then write about this scorecard and how it integrates with your project later. So what is the true assignment? You fill out the scorecard, but you use it as a prompt to write about the ethical aspects of your project. Like I said before, each individual team member fills out the individual engineer section. The team fills out the team portion. They fill it out together. And then you fill out the engineering part as well of the product. Like I said before, any strongly disagree indicates an issue that needs to be resolved, and anything identified as strongly agree, you need to justify it. Now, right now, this is part of 198A only inside the business plan, and here's the rubric. You can get these notes online, so I'm not going to spend too much time. Okay, but it's a paragraph, and it's about 250 words, and this is the business plan is a group assignment. Now, as far as Engineering 195A is concerned, it'll be a 2-page double-spaced group writing assignment, and it will be assessed on how well the ethical issues were integrated with the product, how well the issues raised by the scorecard were supported or resolved, and how well you were able to integrate or discuss the other GE modules in relation to your project. Eventually, this part of the assignment will disappear from senior project in the major of EE and will be completely done in Engineering 195A, currently Engineering 180. And that's it for now.